Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today, we're unpacking a truly fascinating Corpus Christi homily by Father João Jamarsis Gatus. And look, whether you're deeply religious or just kind of fascinated by human psychology and moral philosophy, the metaphors he uses to describe our inner lives, they offer a lot to chew on. We're going to look at what we're feeding our minds, the hidden causes of this deep modern exhaustion we all seem to feel, and how a simple shift in perspective might just be the exact nourishment we are starving for. So let's just dive right in. To really get to the core of this message, Father Gatus starts with a story that is equally hilarious and, honestly, a little gross. So, picture this. A 3-year-old girl gets a toy tea set for her birthday. She happily serves her dad a tiny cup of water. He plays along, drinks it, and says, yummy. She runs off, comes back, and serves him another cup. He drinks it again. But then he gets curious. Where exactly is she getting this water? She's way too short to reach the sink or the water dispenser, so he quietly follows her, right into the bathroom where she is just happily scooping water out of the toilet bowl. Yeah, suddenly that water wasn't so yummy anymore. It's a funny little anecdote, sure, but it asks a seriously profound question. What are we unknowingly feeding ourselves on a daily basis? Okay, let's dive into this, because this is where the hypocrisy of our daily lives really gets exposed. Father Gatus points out that when it comes to physical food, we are incredibly picky, right? We throw out spoiled milk without a second thought. We avoid eating scavenged leftover fast food, which is known in the Philippines as pug-pug, because, well, it can make us sick. If something smells bad, we toss it out. But what about our spiritual food? Why is it that the things that should literally make our souls sick, like toxic gossip, societal corruption, or just deep-seated anger, we consume them so readily? We just swallow them down without even blinking an eye. Which brings us to the diet of sin and how we are constantly consuming the toxic. Father Gatus calls out these societal behaviors specifically. I mean, think about it. We see corruption, but if we benefit from it, we just stay quiet. We lie to save face. People go online and hurl the absolute most toxic curses at each other in the comment section, often while having a literal religious picture as their profile photo. It's wild. We turn a blind eye to infidelity, or we ignore drug problems right in our own neighborhoods because we just don't want to get involved. We waste perfectly good food while others are starving. We even watch devastating wars on the news as if they were just, evening entertainment. So why do we accept these toxic behaviors as just a normal part of life? Well, the answer actually lies in psychology. The homily draws on this concept of desensitization, and it happens in 3 simple yet devastating steps. First, you have repeated exposure to a sin or a toxic behavior. Second, because you see it so often, your conscience just begins to go numb. It literally doesn't shock you anymore. And finally, step 3, the wrong actually begins to feel right. The abnormal becomes completely normal. It's not that the toxic behavior makes us truly happy. It just kind of numbs us to the reality of the damage it's actually causing. And this leads to one of the most tragic realities of human nature. He says, when you get used to the dark, you get blinded by the light. When you get used to anger, you get irritated by forgiveness. If you live on a steady diet of negativity and sin, the beautiful teachings of God, things like honesty, humility, and forgiveness, they suddenly feel painful, almost offensive. Being asked to forgive someone feels like an insult when you've become entirely comfortable living in anger. So let's look at the symptoms of an exhausted spirit and how recognizing the hunger is our first real step. Because true exhaustion, the kind so many people are feeling today, it goes way, way beyond just a tired physical body. It is a profound lack of hope, a lack of peace, and a lack of connection. You can have all the wealth, the perfect job, the fame, millions of followers, and you will still feel completely drained. Why? Because some hunger simply cannot be satisfied by money, and some exhaustion cannot be cured by a luxury vacation. It's a deep spiritual fatigue. Father Gatus illustrates this with a really compelling story about a famous vlogger, Sir Gavin, who recently suffered a severe panic attack from intense stress, fatigue, and pressure. Now, when someone has a panic attack, a really common first aid response is to have them breathe into a paper bag to restore that balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in their body. And this creates a brilliant analogy. If a body in a panic attack needs that paper bag to balance its oxygen, what is the first aid for a suffocating soul? When our spirit lacks the breath of God, we experience a totally different kind of panic, a complete lack of peace and direction. That brings us to the cure for the soul, the bread of life. The Eucharist, which is celebrated on Corpus Christi, is not just some theological abstraction or a symbol. It is presented as the true food and drink for the soul. It's the body and blood of Christ, designed specifically to provide strength, healing, and hope for the sheer hardships of our earthly journey. It is literally the most nutritious spiritual food imaginable, directly combating that toxic junk food diet we were talking about earlier.
And what's really interesting about this promise is its sheer inclusivity. Christ says, "I am the bread of life." Father Gatus emphasizes that he didn't say he was the bread only for the wealthy, or only for the incredibly smart, or only for those who have their lives perfectly put together. No way. He is the bread for all of life. Whether you're struggling, burdened, joyful, or feeling just entirely lost, this nourishment is offered directly to you, exactly where you are right now.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next point: a hospital for sinners, reframing the church. Consider this incredibly touching anecdote from the homily. There's an elderly man with a cane walking slowly and painfully just to attend daily mass. A priest notices him and asks, "Grandpa, you're old and it hurts to walk. God understands. Why don't you just stay home and watch online?" And the old man gives just an incredible answer. He says, "Father, I go to church not because I am strong, but because I need strength. We don't seek God because we're already perfect. We seek him precisely because of our weakness and our need for mercy." This brings us to an absolutely crucial point, maybe the most powerful quote of the whole thing. The church is not a museum of saints, but a hospital for the wounded. The altar is not some trophy for good behavior. It's a dining table for those who are starving, for those who are completely exhausted, and for those who are right on the verge of giving up. Think about it. You go to the hospital when you're sick, and you go to Mass when your soul needs healing. And that brings up a highly relevant point in our modern digital age: attending Mass online versus in person. Father Gatus uses a very humorous yet totally undeniable comparison. Watching Mass online is kind of like watching a video of someone else eating a delicious, juicy hamburger. I mean, sure, it looks great, but you don't actually get full. Attending in person is actually tasting and eating the hamburger yourself. Online is fine as an addition, but if your soul is literally starving, you wouldn't just watch a screen, right? You need to show up and actually eat. So I want to leave you with this deeply provocative question derived straight from today's source material. Are you sickened by sin, or have you simply gotten used to it? Have you been drinking the toxic water without even realizing it, numbing your conscience until wrong just feels right? It might be time to reawaken those spiritual senses. Check your spiritual diet, recognize your exhaustion for what it truly is, and please, don't be afraid to seek out the true healing nourishment that your soul desperately craves. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks some deep reflection for you today.